Physical media is alive and well in 2025. And I wanted to come on here and make this video because I think it's important that someone comes on here and makes this video, because there's been so many people in the YouTube space saying, oh, LG pulled out of the market, they're going away, there's no more physical media, it's all going the way of the dinosaurs. And it's usually coming from people who've never owned a piece of physical media or haven't owned a piece of physical media in decades. And look, I am fans of some of those people. John Campier is one of them. I'm a big fan of John Campier. But for Campier to come on and say, hey, I saw LG going out of business, or LG pulling out of that space, I know all about physical media. I don't know all, he doesn't know all about physical media. I'm sure Rob Burnett, he's co-host. He'll be able to tell him, yeah, it's definitely not going away anywhere. And I wrote down some things here. I sound a bit off because my cold has basically healed, but I'm still getting over it, sort of. Like, my voice is kind of still bouncing back. But yeah, LG pulled out of the market. And here's the thing. LG had dwindling market share. It's not like they were the leader in the space and were the #1 selling Blu-ray 4K player on planet Earth. They were never that. I mean, they made a lot of LG players, but that space for them was losing money, essentially. They were manufacturing a player that didn't sell. And here's the thing. They were a competitor to Sony and Panasonic's dominance. Now, I wrote down a little analogy here. I've got a few little dot points because I want to kind of go over a few things. Saying that LG pulling out of physical media Blu-ray players is like saying RC Cola are pulling out of the cola market, so therefore Coca-Cola and Pepsi are going out of business. People who say that LG were a massive player in the market, yeah, they're a massive company, but they were not a big player in that physical media space. Now, they make televisions, OLEDs, their OLEDs are top of the range. They are some of the best OLEDs on planet Earth at the moment. The sound bars are great. They make a lot of a lot of products that do very well. They don't need to ship a dying Blu-ray player that can't sell because Sony and Panasonic have cornered the market. So, Sony did announce they were pulling out of Blu-ray disc rewritables, or writables, so BDRs. And people also took that and said, oh, well, that shows that Sony's getting out of physical media. Far from it. They have still got a disc drive that they are manufacturing, a 4K Blu-ray player drive for the PlayStation 5. They've got some of the best players on planet Earth at the moment. And yeah, Sony are far from getting outside of physical media. All they're saying with that announcement is that they're giving up on the rewritable ones. So the ones that you can buy from wherever you buy your rewritable discs from, if you still do. I personally haven't burnt a disc in years, but you know, some people still do it. So if that was your thing, it just means that Sony are pulling out of that market, meaning you can't make your own Blu-rays. But they are still manufacturing their Blu-rays to release, if that makes sense. It just means that you're not going to see them on shelf saying, here's a pack of 50 Blu-ray discs that you can write to, and it's Sony. That's all it means. But even that market is very healthy at the moment, because there are so many, like Verbatim, I believe, is one player, massive player in that market. There are so many players in the market that isn't Sony, that market can still survive. And, you know, doubling down on what they're focusing on, they're probably thinking, okay, you know, televisions are selling pretty well, and the PlayStation priority, and then also the film division is also a big focus. Sony have a lot of avenues to focus on other than making a writable disc that probably only a few people still buy in 2025. So that doesn't mean they're pulling out of physical media altogether. Far from it. They've actually made a deal with Disney to release Disney films on physical media, on 4K going forward. It doesn't mean, like, Sony got the license to that. You think Sony's going to let that go away? And likewise, some of their biggest selling things are stuff like Into the Spider-Verse. Where is Into the Spider-Verse? It's somewhere here. But, you know, some of their biggest selling physical media properties are on physical media, you know, some of their biggest movies. You think they're going to turn down an avenue to make money? I mean, Sony's not going to do that. I mean, if it's something like Blu-ray rewritables, they might say, yeah, I don't think that is a avenue that is worth investing in any further. but that doesn't mean that it's all going away. I mean, they're still going to make an absolute cash cow of money when they release Spider-Man 4 on 4K. You know, they're still going to make a lot of money. And so, you know, here's some movies I wrote down because I did a bit of a list here. So 2025 is looking very good for physical media. Seven's coming out on physical media, 4K. Sanctum, Drag Me to Hell, the Kill Bill movies, Jackie Brown, The Cell, Sea of Love. I'm sure there's plenty more. There's also newer releases of Venom. Imagine how many copies Sony's going to sell of Venom when that comes out. I'm just saying, it's alive and well. And Smile 2 is also apparently getting released. Oh, and that's only for January. So yeah, people who say, oh, physical media is dying. It's not dying. It is alive and well. And this shows that it's doing alive and well. In January alone, we're getting some big releases there. And that's only the catalog stuff. There is more there that I haven't wrote down. But even then, like, you know, major labels are going to continue releasing. I'm just going to close the iPad because I want to talk off the top of my head rather than look at this iPad constantly. But, you know, 2025, yes, big studios are going to continue releasing. I think we've got some releases coming up from Warner. We've got some releases from Universal. There are a lot of releases coming out. But even then, your niche studios like Arrow and Criterion, they are certainly doubling down on the format. They are not going to turn down a outlet where they make a majority of their money. And I also did a review on this a couple of days ago. I'm just going to get it down from here. American Pie on 4K. This is from 88 Films. The niche labels are focusing on catalogs like this, like the movies that you wouldn't typically think, okay, 4K, like, does American Pie need a 4K? Most people would say no, it doesn't really need a 4K. It's nice that it has it, but this is what I mean. The niche labels are really focusing on, okay, where's the gaps in the market? So if the major studios don't want to do it, the niche labels will carry 2025, 2026, 2027, and so on. And this is what really annoys me. People who don't own physical media are commenting on physical media like saying, it's raining fire from the sky, it's all going downhill. And there are even people in the space talking about like, oh, well, I must be dying because LG pulled out. All you have to do is analyze the market longer than 10 minutes and you'll know that, yeah, LG didn't sell a bunch of those players. I mean, they still sold a lot of them, but they didn't sell a bunch compared to Sony and Panasonic's dominance. And there are reasons why that Sony and Panasonic are the leaders in that market. A, they've got really good players. B, they usually have Dolby Vision, which, you know, Samsung, when they had players out, they didn't have Dolby Vision. Now, the PlayStation, I believe, to the most part, doesn't have Dolby Vision. The Xbox doesn't. But, you know, when you're comparing, like, an LG player compared to, like, a Sony or a Panasonic or even the PlayStation or Xboxes, you can have games on those consoles or you can have a dedicated player that's the high end. But LG's in that weird spot where it wasn't gonna, like, it wasn't anything in that space. And so they've obviously doubled down to focus in on other stuff. Now, also, we need to take in mind that Sony and Panasonic, well, Sony make cameras and they also are a movie studio. So they have their own cameras, they have their own movies. They shoot a lot of their own movies on Sony hardware. So they also invented the Blu-ray format, helped, like, that format when it started out. That was the first time I saw it in a gaming console was in the PlayStation 3. So obviously they have an incentive to keep Blu-ray around. You know, it's their technology in a large part. It's something that they put a lot of time and effort into. As for Panasonic, they also film a lot of movies. Their cameras are industry standard a lot across the industry. There's a lot of Panasonic cameras that are being used to film great movies over time and still continue to film great movies. Panasonic are something that a lot of filmmakers turn to as like, okay, we shot it on Panasonic, but Panasonic offer us all these little things that help us in the filmmaking process. And it shows on 4K and on Panasonic players. So, you know, the two biggest players in the world in terms of Sony and Panasonic are certainly not going anywhere. And the reason for that is because they do have incentives to stay in the space. And yeah, I believe physical media is still going to continue coming out. As I said, there's a few major titles coming out in January alone, and that's only for January. Think about what we're going to get in February, March. Are we going to get the rest of the Nightmare on Elm Street? There's all this content's going to come out. Like, we are starting to think like, okay, LG or whatever pulled out of the market. But as I said, it's the RC Cola to Coke and Pepsi, you know? It's not going, like, the major players aren't going anywhere. Just because LG said, you know what, let's focus in on something else with that time and resources, because it is time and resources, as said in a previous video, R&D costs a lot of money for these companies. LG might be saying, yeah, well, we can take that money and put it into nanotech or whatever, like make our TVs even better. Transparent TVs, I've even heard, are coming to the market now. Like, there's a lot of stuff that they could be putting that money into. And yeah, shipping a failing or like not widely adapted Blu-ray player is not a smart business asset. Now, as I said, Sony and Panasonic are shipping multiple millions of these things, you know? They are certainly not going anywhere. And I think as we go on, we need to start looking at, okay, who would really make the market struggle if they put out? I believe Sony would, because Sony are the PlayStation manufacturers. If they said in PS6 we're not going to put a player in there at all, there's not going to even be an add-on, then I would start saying, ooh, okay. And if Panasonic pulled out tomorrow, I'd be like, okay, it seems like 4K is dying in terms of, if Panasonic pulled out and said, yeah, we don't see any incentive in doing this anymore, that's when I would start saying, okay, now I have to start analyzing it as this technology is starting to dwindle. But even then, you saw that with VHS, where VHS went away, a lot of niche labels popped up to take its place. What would really make the industry struggle is if they went to the factories that manufacture the lasers and shut all those down. They aren't going anywhere. This is the thing. And I believe people who constantly have to come on here and say, oh, physical media is dying, probably don't know what they're talking about, and probably haven't analysed the market longer than 10 minutes. Now, in all fairness to Campion, I am a fan of John Campion. John Campion hasn't owned a piece of physical media in decades. He's admitted this himself, or however long he said. Robert Burnett should have been on that episode where Campion was saying that, and should have called him out on it. And I'm sure Robert would tell him in the next episode, like, hey, physical media is not going anywhere. Like, he's a big collector, and I'm sure he'll call him out. As would Films at Home, as would so many other people in the YouTube space would call out, hey, you don't own physical media. Why are you commenting like you know all about physical media? And even me, like, I collect physical media. I certainly don't know what's being made at the board level of, you know, LG or Sony or Panasonic. I don't know. I'm not in those conversations. But, you know, I'm sure LG had an incentive to put that R&D funding that they're putting into Blu-ray players, into televisions, into soundbars, into even washing machines, if they still do that. I don't know. Fridges, I don't know. You know, there are so many outlets that LG could be putting money towards that actually sell. And as people continue to pick up Sony and Sony Blu-ray players, and also Panasonic, I'm going to stop stuttering my words. But if Sony and Panasonic keep shipping Blu-ray players, and people keep buying them, they're going to keep making them. It's only when the market says, you know what, we don't really want this, or a new technology comes along. Let's say 8K came along and everyone said, okay, we need 8K, and no one was buying 4K players anymore. Then they would abandon it. But there's just too much incentive there for them to abandon it at the moment, and that's why physical media is alive and well in 2025. And this is what I want to end on, because we just need people on YouTube right now saying the facts. It's still alive. Sony and Panasonic are still shipping. There are a lot of people releasing catalog movies in 2025. There is a lot of incentive to go out and buy 4K. And here's the thing, as LG's out of the market, but as now Sony and Panasonic get more market share, you could see them say, yeah, let's do a low-end player, because LG might have been the low end. Okay, let's do a lower-end player. Let's put it at $200. Let's have it play 4K, Dolby. And I think the UB 840, 850 even has that. I think they're a low-end player that can play Dolby and can play everything you need it to. So, you know, the low end can be a very vast market for these guys. If the UB 820 stopped selling, they could say, oh, well, we'll just focus on low end. Let's get that lowest end Blu-ray player up to spec, and we'll make it sell as much as possible. It's not going anywhere. Until they go the low end and everything's been exhausted and there's nothing left, that's when the formats will be in trouble. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. I know it's a bit of a lengthy one, but I wanted to start 2025 off right. And if you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, drop a comment, follow the Instagram down there. I will be posting almost daily on my Instagram. And if you like check out one of these videos over here. I'll put a couple here, one here and one here. And you can check them out and tell me what you think. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one. Peace.